registers for Mount St. Lawrence, and it's on these registers that the City Archives has been able to partner with Mary Immaculate College to build a searchable database of Mount St. Lawrence. All of the investigations and the history of Mount St. Lawrence is made possible by the survival of these wonderful records.
Mount St. Lawrence here has been part of Limerick City since just after the famine. It was opened as a cemetery in 1849, largely because the existing city graveyards had outrun their capacity and were becoming somewhat of a health hazard. It was a response not just to the famine but also to a very serious cholera epidemic which hit Ireland in 1849. However, the first burial wasn't, as I say, until 1855, and between then and now about 70,000 people have been buried in Mount St. Lawrence, and I suppose there are about 7,000 graves with markers of various sorts. Mount St. Lawrence began as an interdenominational cemetery, but for very logical reasons it became a Roman Catholic cemetery. It was taken over and managed by the Roman Catholic Church in Limerick, and it remained within their management until 1979, when the then Limerick City Council took over management. It's a garden cemetery, very much one of these Victorian ideas that cemeteries, which are burial places which are not around individual churches but which are separate entities, that burial places should be pleasant places around which to walk as well as to bury one's dead, and that they should be laid out in a fairly logical manner and in a scenic manner as well. Its main focus, I suppose, from the point of view of this whole project is not just that it is the burial place of many people's loved ones and families, which of course it is, but also that it's a city of the dead which parallels the living city. And one can actually see how different localities, different classes, different families held their place, the place that they had held as living families and now hold in this garden cemetery.
We're looking at a stone here that's possibly 100 years old. Now this stone hasn't been vandalised in any way, and yet you can see that there's, from this point to this point here, it's quite smooth, and it has run a crack itself due to weather conditions, be it frost or rain or acid rain, or perhaps the stone itself first day the grain of it wasn't good, and it has decayed to a point where it has just tipped over itself. And some people would believe that would have been vandalism, but that is not the case with a lot of stones here. It's fair wear and tear and fatigue, and unfortunately, that its life is coming to an end. So even stone doesn't have the right to last forever. Maintenance here is an ongoing difficulty for us, I suppose. Really, we have a small staff, and to keep to the standard as that, we've got to get out almost every day and make sure that things don't get ahead of us. If we didn't control this cemetery annually, within 3 years, I'm quite sure that you would not be able to walk through it, because this young sapling here would be probably 3 feet high.
The Limerick Republican plot was established in March 1921 as a result of a terrible tragedy, namely the murder of 2 mayors of Limerick, sitting Mayor George Clancy and his predecessor Michael O'Callaghan, plus a third man, Joseph O'Donoghue, who was a Westmeath-born Republican activist. Perhaps the most famous person buried here is Sean South, who was killed at the very end of December 1956 while taking part in an attack on an RUC barracks in Northern Ireland. Following the War of Independence, the Civil War, The Republican plot was neglected somewhat for a few years, and then it was decided that it would have to be completed and a suitable monument erected. And it was decided that Oliver Shepherd, one of the best known sculptors in Ireland, should design the huge Celtic cross which is here behind me. One of the most prominent features of Mount St. Lawrence Cemetery are the institutional plots. For example, various religious orders have plots here where their members are buried, such as the Franciscans, the Christian Brothers and the Augustinians.
Over the past 2 years, 2.5 years, Mary Immaculate College and the Limerick City Council, City Archives, have been working on the Mount St. Lawrence project, which among many other things involved some 400 students from Mary I, geographers and historians coming to work on recording the gravestone inscriptions, transcribing those inscriptions, and eventually having these inscriptions moved on to a searchable database which will be operational in the future.
I'm Mary Curie from Mary Immaculate College in Limerick. Today we're here in Mount St. Lawrence graveyard recording headstones, looking at the size of the headstones, what's written on them, the iconography, the style of writing, and also any memorials that are placed on the grave itself.
It was hands-on work. They worked in pairs, they had to cooperate with one another, they had to operate as part of a team, and they worked in good and bad weather to complete the transcription, some of which was very difficult, on the headstones. And this is probably the most lasting legacy that students got from this, is that they understood that history is not just about documents and maybe gravestones, but it's actually about real people. And the emotional aspect of this came across, and a lot of them talked about that later. You know, seeing kids, very young children buried, seeing the burial stones of people who died in tragic circumstances, seeing the graves of war dead, well, from whichever context, I think brought the fact that this isn't just a dry record, that it links with real people's lives. And I think that was a very important lesson.
As part of a final year module in the Geography Department in Mary Immaculate College, students of Tourism and Heritage Management came here to the graveyard to undertake a conservation survey of the older stones in the graveyard. As you can see around us here today, there are numerous conservation issues here in the graveyard at Mount St. Lawrence. We can see around us broken stones. We can see examples of ironwork that is obviously heavily corroded at this point, broken ironwork, broken surrounds to the actual stones themselves.
Another component of the Mount St. Lawrence project was oral history, and all the supervisors, we recorded up to 10 members of the public each. For me, this one really stands out. It's the Walsh family memorial. We have John Walsh, his son Brian, and his wife Mary. Mary was an attaché with the League of Nations in the early part of the 20th century. Her father, John Walsh, as you can see, he was a national school teacher, and he was also a member of Limerick City Council. So I just think it's an interesting grave, an interesting family in the sense of the city.
Here we have the family grave of the Burke family. The Burke family are a well-known family in Limerick City, and one of the Burkes is Mikey Feathery Burke, who had a number of businesses in Limerick City, on Cornmarket Row and on High Street. He had a feather business. Two of his nephews, which are more famous than Feathery himself, includes Sean Burke, who gained worldwide publicity in accompanying the escape of the spy George Blake, which then in turn released to the publication of a #1 worldwide bestseller, The Springing of George Blake. Another one of his famous nephews is Desmond O'Grady. Desmond is a well-known author and Irish poet, and he has many publications under his own name.
One of the stories was of the Barry family of Limerick City. These were a prominent family. They had many of the butcher shops, especially along William Street. And they were also politically important, as one of the members of the family was a former mayor of Limerick City.